Hi all. Now we have Dr. Kiran, Marri, Karthikeyan, Swaminathan, and Dr. Rakesh Rajegowda from CSS Corporation presenting the whys, whats, hows of content testing, engineering QA approach. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Karthik. Yeah, the screen is up. So, very good morning to all. So, to set the context of this problem, the content is something that is very dynamic and it keeps changing on all the digital assets. And in the last 2 years, the different types of problems that we have fixed and seen from our clients, ranging from a taxi aggregator to a maps company to a lot of tech support portals as well as e-commerce. So the one common thing across all these the problems related to content is that when the content is static, it becomes pretty much like a typical functional testing project where you know the scope, you know what to test. But the problem comes when the content is going to be dynamic and when there are no boundaries for it. And unfortunately, there are a lot of limitations on the tools and technology that is available specifically for doing the content testing. So in the last 18 months, we have put across multiple frameworks and build a lot of automated solutions, which we'll be presenting in this particular session. So along with me, I have my colleagues, Rakesh and Karthikeyan, who will help me to guide the slides as well. Hi. Rakesh, go to the first slide. Okay, so we'll be talking about the typical challenges, and primarily what we have done is we have taken a lot of use cases in order to elaborate some of these concepts, because the landscape of this content testing is quite huge. So we are talking about right from text to audio to video to images, and then there's a lot of things to be covered. So we have picked up very critical use cases, and as an illustrative example, based on the feedback from the jury, we have tried to elaborate from a support perspective as well as e-commerce, and wherever there's possible, we have taken some specific examples of a video as well. Next slide, Rakesh. So the landscape is pretty much complex from a content perspective, and we were looking at the data in the month of May. The number of visitors in different types of sites are huge. I mean, this is a very known thing. And again, we want to make it clear that we don't want to talk anything about the big data testing, because our approach is going to be very focused on specific use cases related to the content. And if you see some of the clients where we have worked, we do a lot of tech support, and as well as on digital platforms as well, e-commerce and taxi aggregators, maps. These are our typical clients. And the amount of videos, I mean, for example, if I take the cosmetic company, they upload close to 2,000 videos in a span of 1.5 years. And even some of the banks where we help them from the entire ticket support, there are more than 60,000 tickets coming in the span of within a quarter. And when I get into a tech support, the volumes are much more higher. Or for an insurance client, we support almost like more than 1,000 tickets per day. I mean, this is like a huge volume. And if you see the basic issue here for the support portal, for example, there is support portal and there are a lot of information available, but the problem is how exactly the customers are not able to relate it. Either there's a lot of issues or clarity, and we have also done analysis of the top 10 tech support portals, and almost every portal has some issue related to readability or the complexity or ease of understanding or ease to navigate, and thus the content testing becomes a larger scope. And Rakesh, next slide. So some of the complexes, challenges and issues that we have seen is the very first part is from how much to test, because testing is going to be a huge cost for the organization also. So in order to test itself, it becomes very much critical. And secondly, there are not clear-cut standards for these kind of testing, specifically to images, audio, video. I mean, what exactly we can test? Let's take an example of a map. In the map, every day a lot of content gets added to the map as a app, where you have the places of interest, and it keeps dynamically growing. Now, what exactly to test here? And if I get into an example of a tech support site, so the portals, a lot of data is getting added, a lot of technical data is getting added, and most of these technical documents are written by technical people who don't understand from an end user perspective. So overall, there are a lot of challenges when we get into the testing of when there's a lot of information available in form of text. There's challenges, and as well, right? When there is a statement like pictures says more than 1,000 words, so we end up putting a lot of images in one of our portals that we did a complete transformation. We saw like close to 5,000 images in 700 page URL. Again, right, it has other complexities in terms of performance and customer experience. So whole idea is that there are diverse kind of problems, and based on the end of business, whether it's a brand or whether it's going to be a support portal or a e-commerce platform or a product review or a social site, the kind of complexities and the challenges are going to be diverse. So that is something that we need to take care while trying to define the scope of content testing. Rakesh, next slide. So this is just a quick snapshot about see the dimension of content testing is huge, as I've been saying, and these things vary for different clients. So this is just a snapshot to give you the dynamics of the variations in the content portal. So in order to explain these things, in the following slides, I'll be explaining primarily from a when I say content, it means all the four parts: text, image, audio, video. And usually pure audio is a very rare event for us. Usually it's like a video that actually has audio. So that's what we inherently do the testing from an audio perspective. Next slide, Rakesh. So coming to the framework, so the engineering, so we defined a framework which is a very rapid framework in order to do these kind of a testing from a content perspective. One of the challenges of this particular area is that it's a rapidly evolving area, and challenges are too many, and it's better to fail fast. So with that in context, we normally invest anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks once we start identifying a problem, and then we start getting into that. So if it's going to be a support text testing, so there are certain things that we need to follow in terms of NLP concepts and machine learning, and we also have a COE that we have built in. So the typical structure of defining this particular framework for content testing would be to identify the scope and then define the hypothesis. And we have mentioned a few sample hypotheses in this particular presentation. And these hypotheses can be pretty much generic as well as domain specific. So that is something where we need to get some kind of interaction with the domain experts, and then identify the typical factors and attributes that can influence the overall perspective from a business perspective as well as from a outcome perspective, and then develop a rapid POCs. And again, right, then improvisation, and then once the POC is successful, and then get into a larger scale. And that's how it works. And what is different from a typical QA approach? Only one main difference would be to have a two-week kind of rapid automation environment. And the second thing is that the difference is the kind of skill set that is required is going to be completely different than a traditional QA team. So here we have people with diverse skills, and which I'll be explaining in depending on the use cases. Rakesh, next slide, please. So this is a repository of a lot of metrics that we are sharing rather, from a text perspective and from image and audio video. Once the business context is very clear, then probably, right, each one would have a much more higher information. See, for example, right, if I am going to talk about a text in a support portal, Then the content plays a very major role in terms of searchability, in terms of clarity, in terms of understanding the language in which it has been written. Even though it's English, typically, right, we have seen in support portals, it goes up to 35 words per sentence. So the count of words is not the critical thing, but the ease to understand the content is the critical thing. So likewise, when you go to e-commerce, the text might not be a very important from understanding perspective, but more from a searchability. So each one has got a different kind of an impact. So it has to be contextualized to the domain and to the kind of portal that we are testing. So again, right, this is just, this entire landscape is a generic perspective, which is applicable for most of the scenarios that we are going to touch upon. Next slide, Rakesh. So this is a typical approach in which, for example, there are multiple things to share, but we have taken one very important thing is from a search perspective. So typically, right, the fundamental idea of implementing a good search is to make sure that when there is a support portal, for example, or if there's an e-commerce where you need to search for a product, the idea is that the end user should be able to search for that information. The input can come from multiple forms. It could be the exact phrase in which, if the person is actually aware of the product or aware about the problem that he's looking for or the information he's looking for, he might actually use the exact phrase. So most likely it might hit well. But the problem comes when they try to use because it's numerous combinations are possible, right? We are talking about phrases and text information. So this is where the concept of fuzzy logic plays a very, very vital role in order to figure out the implementation aspect and to evaluate how good the search engine is. And again, right, the search, it also is a factor of the, we are not talking about SEO perspective, but slightly beyond that. And it also depends upon the internal search or whether it's external search. So this kind of an approach would be pretty much can solve a lot of things from a search perspective. Next slide. So next is a framework for doing the video content analysis. So video is it's still an evolving area, I would say. So here the idea is that where do we actually implement video content testing is primarily for most of our YouTube channels. A lot of videos are getting posted. As I told, a cosmetic brand, they upload close to 2,000 videos. In a period of last 16 months, we have a count, and on a monthly basis, video get pumped in. And these videos would be anywhere between 1 minute to, it can go up to 7 minutes. Whereas in a tech support, it's slightly a different thing. They talk about their products, they talk about how to use a product or how to fix a problem. So the different content is that. So in this kind of analysis, right, the content kind of content testing that we do, one is based on from a image perspective. We break the image, all the video into different frames, and then we also do the audio analysis. And if there are subtitles, in some cases they do have, they embed the subtitles in, not the one which YouTube uses. So again, right, the scope is quite diverse from a content testing perspective, and this is one of the complex area in which we have shown some very good results, which I'll be sharing in coming slides. So this is so with this last couple of months of experience, we have been able to propose a maturity model for the content testing. So the whole idea is that we educate the client saying that, right, this is exactly what, if depending upon the maturity of the client and how much they want to invest in, because content testing is going to be very expensive because the boundaries are quite huge. And for most of the common things, at least we try to say that, no, these are the hygiene things that you need to check from a content perspective. And then there's a level 1. And when you go to the user experience and where a lot of investment is required, then it gets into level 4. So we do give some kind of a predictions, some kind of prescriptive analysis. For example, one prescriptive analysis we do is that we analyze that sentences written in the different forms, and then we try to give measure the ease to ease of readability, and then give an alternative solution, which again gets into a human interactive process in order to get approval, because technology is still not evolved where you have a long sentence, you break it into some shorter sentences. I mean, it's not going to really work out in that way. Yeah, going to the next slide. So far I've explained about the overall methodology and the process. So the whole idea is that there are 6 broad areas which we want to define in terms of any form of content testing. And the last 4 parameters, the standardization, benchmarking, portal types, and domain consideration, is very specific to the client. So if, once we understand the client, and these things would actually have an impact. And some of these examples I'll be showing in the coming slide. So before Rakesh, next slide. So just to give you a perspective about, can you go to the slide number? Support portal and e-commerce portal. So just to give you a perspective of how exactly, because the focus is going to be completely different in the support portal as compared to e-commerce portal, even though the hypothesis might be kind of same. Because the alignment issue or the out of stock or I mean, these are some typical things that might dynamically change because it is coming from multiple third parties, or a maps kind of a testing, or something like a food aggregator where different restaurants keep pumping data. So the whole idea is that, right, once the depending upon the portal, depending upon the domain, some of these hypotheses have to be fine-tuned. So within we have tried to propose close to a minimum of 45 generic ones which can be applicable to most of the portals, and after that we start adding based on the customer problem. So the next, the very first, I'll get into the results and use cases. So this is a typical example of a support portal where we have taken for one of our client, we have seen that there is a specific area in which almost 8% of their overall tickets, I mean, we are talking about some 10,000 tickets only in certain particular category, which have been reported very often. And when we looked into this, I mean, the whole idea is that when the content is actually available in the support portal, why is that the end users are not able to get into that and try to understand and fix their problem? And the challenges that, I mean, again, right, it's when people are raising tickets, it's not like they raise the same ticket again. It's not like cut paste. It can come in multiple forms, even though the solution might be pretty much same. And one thing that we were able to find out is whether it's actually available in different search engines. And second one is from a relevancy perspective, because what is getting search and hit also might not be actually relevant. So that is other important thing. And in order to design this tool, again, right, the whole idea is that support portals, when people are starting to look into the content perspective in a support portal, they have to look into the ticket information and then derive the entire logic and the focus point in order to measure the scope. And again, right, the relevancy is the key thing, because what is getting searched and comes on your search engine may not be the relevant information that the customer is looking for. Next slide, Rakesh. And one of the adding to this, extending the same problem to the next concept would be from a language perspective. So again, right, one of the things that we have established from a content testing is always there's a complexity when it comes to a different language, especially when the language that we are not aware of. So this is another classic example of for e-commerce where we have actually helped them to do the content internal search perspective from a different language. So this is for Russian. Again, right, the framework that we have built pretty much works on at least the popular languages. In fact, we have tested on French, Spanish, and Russian. We really don't know whether the same framework will work for other languages as well. But yeah, conceptually it works. Maybe little tweaking is required. So again, right, if you see here, a very important approach that we have, learnings that we, in fact, we do is in terms of the query type, we actually generate a list of the exact phrases typically people use and the synonyms, and then the keywords and the meta words. So metadata and the keywords are typically available in your pages, and usually that will be given lower weightage as compared to the exact and synonym words. And so again, right, we have benchmarked certain scores. So if our score comes to around 8 plus, then it's actually good for internal search. So this is another classic example where it's a very useful feature, and it goes across portals, whether it's a support portal or for e-commerce portal. Still, the concept and the framework still works. Next slide is to do with more from a readability perspective. So Rakesh, next slide. So here, see what do we mean by readability? So readability is not that there is a language. English is a language here, but again, right here, so these are two examples where the word size is in one sentence is around 38 words and another one is 34. Now we have defined something called the complexity of a sentence in terms of ease of understanding, which has been built on machine learning models using a medical data, where it doesn't go by the number of words, but it depends on the number of the structure of the sentence, the number of nouns, verbs, and conjunctions, so on. So we rate this as 1 is good, 2 needs improvement, 3 is complex. So what we do is actually in this screen you can just see how the tool actually does a recommendation. But again, right, as I told you, this recommendation is a generic recommendation which is actually further vetted by experts in the domain, because what it gives you a generic stuff, and then later on it has to be and again, right, just for the comparison, the number of words pretty much might be the same. Maybe some tense might be changing here and there, but again, and when we do the reverse complexity, it actually comes to 1. So this is how we filter the content that comes on a rapid pace from multiple technical people in support center. Rakesh, next slide, please. So having seen a lot of content, one thing that is closely linked to the overall content is how well the website structure is. Because while see, the whole idea is why this slide is very, very important is content. You may have 1,000-line sentences in one URL, or you can put it in 2 URLs. I mean, it's a choice of how the design team is going to structure, or the domain team is going to structure from an overall perspective. So what we have done is here, I'm giving you 2 examples of an e-commerce portal and a support portal with 200 plus and 500 plus pages. And if you see, there are certain elements in how the entire concept is being viewed. So when you visualize this, right, and you present it to the client, it becomes much more clear on from how complex it is going to be from a navigation perspective. So the content is available, but the navigation is going to be a big challenge. And of course, there are a lot of metrics that we have defined in order to make sure that it gets benchmarked. And on the right-hand side, you can see that for a support portal, which had actually around close to 5,000 images and 600 URLs, we did a digital transformation. And with the new one, it has got a fewer URLs and a much lower number of images. And again, right, this is again a very good area for looking from a performance engineering perspective, how to organize your content in a much more better way. So again, right, this is a completely new area, again related to how you can branch your content from a navigation perspective. Moving on to the next slide. So here it is more to do with the layout. See, there are a lot of concept. This is a very critical concept from a visualization perspective. The content that is appearing on the screen, it has to be in a certain structure, and this is all defined by Gestalt principles, which is like law of similarity, law of continuity, closure, proximity. So it makes a lot of importance on how it will have an impact on the client or end user from a visual perspective. So again, right, we have derived a lot of metrics. One of the metrics is from entropy. It gives you a degree of disorderedness in terms of the overall perspective. So again, right, this is another way of trying to say that here the focus is not on readability of the content, but how the content is appearing from a visual perspective. Rakesh, next slide, please. So, Rakesh? Yeah. The next slide is to do with more of how the visuals are appearing on different channels. See, this is one of the problems that we have seen in most of our clients, both in tech support as well as in e-commerce space, where the content, it's the same content, but it doesn't appear on a particular device in particular orientation. So either it could be a cropping of text, or it could be because of a contrast issue. I mean, there could be multiple visual kind of issues. This is again, right, something that we have experienced a lot, and this is something that we recommend at least for the critical kind of testing. And again, the biggest problem here is if you're going to get into the view source and check the content, the content would appear. But here we are talking about content that is actually available in view source, but it is not getting displayed on the screen. And again, right, this needs a lot of visual analysis and concept. Sorry. Yeah. And again, we have done one more example in terms of a food aggregator, where we have done a lot of, we have seen a lot of content issues in terms of inconsistencies and crop text and so on. Rakesh, next slide, please. So this is another example of the contrast testing from a content. So again, right, there are not real tools here, and whatever you see in the red color thing is related to all the poor contrast regions. We are showing you both the support and the e-commerce portal. Next slide, please. By the way, the contrast ratio should be 1:4, and usually it's very difficult to do the testing from a image perspective. And this is a classic example of an audio testing that we run on. And again, right, as I said, these audios are specifically stripped out from YouTube videos on which we do the testing. There are 3 different ways of testing: the spectral analysis, the time domain, as well as speech to text analysis. And again, speech to text is really not improved. The current technology is not really good, and especially when the clarity and the background noise is quite huge, that most of the algorithms will not work. And so you have to depend on certain rules, which are and metrics that are derived from spectral and time domain analysis. Moving on to the next slide, Rakesh. Right. This is a video analysis. So here, right, this is one of the complex area from a testing perspective, from a content. So this is still in a very early stage, but again, right, it gives a very good results in terms of here we try to link the outcome of the video in terms of number of viewership versus the investment and the brand ambassador. I mean, there are a lot of other internal metrics which we have not documented here. The whole idea is that we do a frame-wise analysis, and then we look into the objects, and then we try to derive a meaning for it. And we also have some kind of a pattern of what kind of a video would normally have a higher viewership, which we share to our client. Moving on to the last use case. This use case is more related to maps. So this is again one of the very interesting use case that we have done for our clients. One is the route optimization. Other one is a point of POIs, which you call places of interest on the road. So again, right, the root cause of the issue are many, but the whole idea is that how do you do a testing dynamically? So again, a little bit of JS concepts are definitely required, and there are a lot of machine learning models, though there are plenty. The whole idea is that how are you going to apply that to solve your problem? I mean, that is the crux of this entire content testing. So just to give a very Rakesh, next slide. So there are certain characteristics defined from a content testing perspective, and that is exact. I mean, I've tried to share some of the use cases. So broadly, these are the 10 different areas which can actually help. And again, right, as I told, this is just a generic framework, but again, this has to be applied based on the business domain and the problem statement. And moving on to the summary and the key learning slide, Rakesh. So the key thing is that content testing is very expensive. I mean, that is something that.
Hi, Kiran. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Yeah. So we are running a little late on time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll wind up in a minute.
Yeah, wind up. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, we have shared all the experience and skill set that are really required. And the main thing is that what we have learned from this is one is that definitely content testing can be a part of the digital transformation strategy. Rakesh, next slide, please. And it needs a very diverse team and diverse structure in order to work out. And summarizing, this entire concept can be applied on different portals. And we have shared some of the very key learnings, critical learnings, which are not available outside. But again, right, we know that the future of testing is moving towards engineering QA, and we thought that this opportunity can help to probe further testing community to probe further into these problems, and together, right, we testing community can grow overall. Thanks for giving this opportunity, and I'm happy to we are happy to open up for any Q&A.
We only have one question. How are you ensuring the country-wise regularity standards and legal stuff?
Okay, country-wise standards are pretty much, I would say that most of our operations are happening in US. So there are certain complaints, like for example, accessibility, American Disability Act. So those are some things that we take care. But again, right, it's a very specific content. For example, content moderation is a wider area which we have not touched upon. But yeah, that's something that we have to look further. But right now, we are more focused on the generic content part.
Okay, there's another one. You mentioned a maturity level of accessing user experience. What parameters constitute user experience?
See, user experience is again, right. It all depends upon multiple factors. We have measured. In fact, we have documented few metrics inside this. This includes the customer engagement, the customer and the sales aspect, okay, and the customer product reviews. All these things come into play. So these are some things. I mean, there's no one measurement. And again, right, if I get into e-commerce portal, the focus is slightly different from support, tech support. In tech support, a reduction of tickets and where people are able to do more self-help would be a very good user experience as compared to e-commerce portal where there's a seamless journey.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.